Just, you just have it. You just take the medication and.
Yeah, it's because of strokes. You're more prone
Yeah.
to strokes. So.
They put you on the blood thinner because of
Right.
behavioral have a stroke easily.
We have so many people with blood thinners.
I think-
It's unbelievable.
What is it?
Xarelto and
Mine's
Plavix.
Eliquis.
Eliquis is what I'm on, Xarelto.
Redaxa. There's so many of
Then
them.
I'm on also, oh God, they changed it, Carvedilol. Because what I took, it could be for that, they gave it to me because I have a familial shake. So they couldn't slow my heart rate any further down.
My heart rate's slow to start with.
No, you gotta watch that.
So, watch what they do.
So I used to take nothing, and my gosh, I'm taking 8 pills a day now, 5 in the morning and 3 at night. I thought,
Oh, well, I take 8 at night and 4, or 8 in the morning and 4 at night.
Okay, folks, well, it is 7 o'clock. This is our regular committee meetings tonight. We start with the police, the personnel, and then the finance committee. I do know Clarence Bear is working and he won't be here tonight. So the mayor's not here. I'm not sure if he's going to attend or not. But Ron, you're chair of the police committee, so do we have anything to discuss?
We have nothing to discuss at this time. You know, everything, let's just say everything is okay for the present time.
Okay, with the mayor not being here, Jenny will move to personnel.
Mark, I'm gonna punt this to you because you were looking into some things for job descriptions and whatnot.
So I have looked at the job descriptions and I have compared those to the CBA and what our past practice is. The only thing I would add to or change with what is given in the job descriptions that were sent out is I think we should stay with what we currently have in place and what has been in place in the past, because the union would have to approve changing it. And that is the street and those issues go to the street chair, the chair of the street committee, and other issues flow through the president. That's how they've been for years. I reached out to Patty to see if there was a past practice on that. And evidently in 1987 is when that had started, and when they had run into an issue where each person on council was dictating a different job to each person to do, and it was like they never got anywhere. That would be the only change I would make. The other thing I would add is the personnel committee, just so everybody understands, is like the HR role of the borough. So when it comes to whether it's a job description, making those, they should be involved in the hiring, interviewing, all those kind of processes. And it should be the ones that are, involved in those steps. And I think it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, so to speak. But I think that needs to be known going forward.
Mark, actually, talking about the job descriptions, I did read over them, and I thought it was a fair assessment of what our employees are doing now. I definitely agree that the street workers, Brian and RJ, should report first to streets, which would be Terry in this case, and then if they can't get a hold of Terry, to the president. And like you had just said, I talked to Patty also. We went clear back before I was on council to the days of Bill Forrest and Bill Albright, and it's always been that the street workers deal with the street committee. And I would rabidly argue against making any changes in that and moving it over to the personnel. So that's the only thing. Go ahead, Mark, continue.
The only other thing I would add, and I think maybe this has been kind of an issue, and I think the borough is, like the borough as an employer, I'm not going to say it has been at fault, but maybe isn't as clear with the things that need done. There's a lot of times where we ask the borough workers to do things at like the last minute. And I think we need to try to do a better job of giving like more time ahead. Like at the last meeting, Jenny asked for things that were like a month from now, and that provides a lot of ability to do things. That's a good thing. But when we ask them to do things that maybe aren't an emergency, in quotes, and we only tell them 24 or 12 hours away, I don't think that's very respectful. And I think it kind of causes tension. But like I said, like when you asked for like the different things coming up, the different activities, and whether it be like to get I'm just losing my mind, the barriers across the road, like you ask for those ahead of time, it makes it easy. Or if you ask for things to be done at the park ahead of time, it makes it, I'll say, easy for them to do it. And that's a positive thing. But I just think we need to make sure we're not asking them to do things at the last minute. Because I'll give you an example. I was at the magistrate on Tuesday, and while I was sitting there waiting for the magistrate to open, I mean, they did like 3 or 4 different, I don't know what they were working on in town, but they were hauling shale and moving equipment around and doing different stuff. And quite frankly, I don't know what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I just think that's something they haven't filed anything to complain. I'm not saying that. It's just, I think it's good if you guys can plan stuff ahead of time for them to do so they know what you expect.
Mark, let me jump in here. Terry, what do you think? You're head of streets. Do you think things have worked well?
I mean, they know what needs to be done. And I mean, if it's something that comes to our attention that needs done, then I think we ought to address it. But I mean, that's why Brian's in charge.
And you're there all the time, so you get to see what's going on. If you need something, you can just tell them.
So Mark, if we would want to leave the streets.
I hope that siren was on your end.
Yeah, it is. Well, so where do we go with this next? As far as, go ahead.
I would recommend that if it is on, it should be on the agenda, unless Jenny has, changes that she feels should be made. I would recommend that we make that one change just to the change to the chain of command that's in those job descriptions. But for that change, I think the council should approve it so that I can contact the union and then they can review it. Because, and not to belabor this, there are a lot of things that need done in the borough because of extra activities and things that go on now that maybe we didn't do 10 years ago, that should be a part of that job description, that are a part of those job descriptions now. And I think it allows both sides to be able to get those things done.
Well, I guess then, like I say, I read through them pretty carefully. And my only suggestion or concern would be that we change to the street committee chairman, excuse me. But is there any other comment on that? If not, I think everything else was okay in there. Maybe the union will realize something that they don't want to have.
I mean, Jimmy.
But it's pretty innocuous, really. I mean, it lists what their jobs are. Go ahead, Jenny.
Jenny, did you see anything that we should add to that? I mean, I thought the duties that are needed were covered pretty well, but that doesn't mean that I saw all of them either.
Well, no, it did. It covered most everything. But now let me get this straight, just for my own asking. So if I need anything from Brian, say I needed help at the park, do I contact Terry? Because before I've been calling Patty and asking her to ask Brian, and I want it.
And I think that's fine. We can run an informal. I mean, theoretically, I guess Terry, myself, but I mean, my own feeling is
I would never go.
It's getting done, right?
Okay.
So
well,
I think
there's no issue.
No, I think
we can go ahead, Mark.
Jenny's question is a very real question, because chains of command run both ways. And a lot of times when I read this stuff, I'm always thinking about if they have a problem or an issue on their side, who are they communicating with? But you're right, Jenny. I mean, I don't think it's an issue with you letting Patty know those things as long as it's known ahead of time. I mean, the big thing for everybody to keep in mind, there's a lot of stuff that is a daily operational need, whether it's like safety, that kind of stuff. And it's only when it becomes an expenditure or a major decision that those things should actually come before council as a whole. But I don't see any issue with Jenny, calling and asking Patty, as long as there's no issue with the communication.
Anything else under personnel?
No.
Well, then maybe we could ask our council members to be sure they read through this job description again before our meeting Tuesday night. And then if there's any other concerns or objections, we could address that. And
I'll make the correction and I'll send it out if that's what you guys want me to do.
And then if there's any other suggestions at our regular meeting, but I'd say we try to approve this Tuesday night and then send it on to the union, would be my suggestion. Do you have any objection to that,
No.
Jenny, as chair?
No, that's fine.
Anything else under personnel?
That's it.
Okay, then we'll move to the finance committee. Mr. Chairman.
Number one is unresolved items, whatever that might be.
Okay, during the past, my term as president, I had a system, and it was very open to the public. You remember it, Terry, and probably the unresolved item list, and I'm going to pass these out right now. In my opinion, we've been spinning our wheels on certain issues that have been going on. And so the purpose is not to go through this tonight. This is a living list. It's a fluent list. It can be changed. But my concern, the top three on the list, and this is used to prioritize things. This Vietnam Memorial, the MMA Little League swap, and then number three, the railroad emergency access. Now that's going to take care of itself. But I'm frustrated. I call Kevin and say, Kevin, where are we on these? I call Mark. And so finally, about a month ago, I have a dual text between Kevin and Mark, and to find out, like with the war memorial, I found out we needed the plans. The school didn't have the plans. Mark didn't have the plans. So I texted Kevin. Kevin had the plans. And I said, well, would you please take him to the school? Which then he did. But it just seems like I get a little frustrated in dealing with these two situations. So the reason for this list, everything on here is on the agenda. There's nothing afoul of the sunshine law, but it's to prioritize. And just to go down a little bit, the chicken ordinance, the burn ordinance, the short-term rental ordinance, and the amusement tax device ordinance. I would propose that we hold back on those and let, as they move up the list, and then we can move forward. We're swamping our solicitor. Mark and I talked about this a little bit, and then he's going to respond. But we're swamping our solicitor. It seems like each meeting we give him something else to do, and the wheels are spinning. So I would like to each month give one of these as we move forward. Now that doesn't mean we can't work on something further down the list and cross that off. But this is, I think, these top three, we really need to give high priority to get the MMA swap done, and to get the clear deed to this building is contingent upon getting this thing taken out here with our Vietnam. So that's what I would like to propose, that we continue this work very well, and it helped us in the past move forward with items. Not trying to slight anything. If there's any questions, we can take one off and move. This is just a very preliminary starting point, but I would like to see us move forward on number 1, 2, and I think number 3 is going to take care of itself. That's it. Comments on having this unresolved item list. I'll prepare it each month, and then as we progress things, we can move things forward. It's mainly for our communication and dealing with our attorney, Mark. So he has an idea of what our priorities are.
So
Discussion. Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, I have always found that list helpful because what happens, and you guys might not, and I'm not meaning this in a derogatory sense, but you guys might not pay attention each meeting how many things I am given in the different directions I go. But for example, last meeting, there was 9 different things that you asked me to do or look into, etc. The meeting before that, there was 12. And in the last probably year and a half, I have written, I think it's 3 or 4 ordinances that we decided not to even use. And part of this, the reason why I'm okay with this list is not only it helps me prioritize, but I think it also lets me know that I am prioritizing what council wants and what is most important to them. The third part is, and I don't mean this in a rude way, but there are times that I have done work for the borough and then the borough decides to completely change direction. And I would tell you the same as I would tell a private client, you want to be careful how you spend your money and you want to spend it in a useful way. So that is one thing I'll say about that, and I support it. But before you go any further, so everybody knows, I am meeting with the Matthiases tomorrow morning. I'm actually going to walk across the property with them and to make sure they're in agreement with the survey that Jeff was kind enough to get for me finally. Not meaning that towards Jeff, but I appreciate that. So I could meet with them. I've sent a copy to the Shawlesses, and I've spoken with Patty Shawless about that. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go over the property with both of them, and then I'm going to present them with the agreement that I prepared so that we can have that for settlement purposes. And I'll get them to sign once I get, and this will be the next thing I ask for Jeff to do, is for Kevin to get me the actual copies of the survey that are stamped from him, the large size, because I'm going to make sure everybody signs it this time and that everybody's on the same page and that we don't have this cluster yet again. The other one is the school voted and approved the memorial last month, and they were ready, willing, and able to sign it, and they should have, and I put in quotes, received that, because that was not from me, but they should have received the drawings to actually sign them this week, because they said they were prepared to sign them as soon as they got them. They'd already voted on it.
Kevin told me that he took them out 11 a.m. on Monday.
Okay.
I think this was last Monday. I think, or the weeks fly by. So anyway, thanks, Mark. So does anybody have any? Go ahead.
I think that was this week that he did that.
You're right. The days are running together. Does anybody have an objection to just, this is not in any way binding, but it's just to help us. Is there any question or discussion on this? Or objection? It's just something, and it's like I say, the Constitution, it's a living document. So Terry, take it away.
Okay, number 2, Art Darnell and Brandon Reisinger for the Apostolic Church and Main Street property.
I had talked to Artie by text, and I had said maybe be here about 7:30 because I didn't want him to have to wait. So it's my understanding that we can go on and they might be here.
Okay, social media policy.
Yes, I've yet to receive any discussion or comments how you guys want to handle it.
Yeah, I have no clue what we want to do with it.
I think we do basically want to use it as, not as a sounding board, but just as an advertising of what's going on in the community, and more so that way than a sounding board.
Are we talking about our Facebook page, and what about our website page? That
So
we
the
control.
social media, I sent 2 policies out and they involve 2 different topics. One topic is the actual website, Facebook, any social media that the borough uses. okay, in that an employee or elected official has the ability to post things on. We can't restrict elected officials or even employees from voicing their freedom of speech on their own time. But Jenny is right. It's more about controlling the type of things that are put on those sites, just so that it doesn't appear like the borough is supporting things or doing things that are not what the borough should be doing. The other part of it, though, is this. There's also a portion of that policy that I sent, and it doesn't mean you have to adopt either or both, but the other portion involves with employees, because one thing that we kind of take for granted is when they're at work, and this is not on their own personal posting, but like, for example, we have Patty, taking care of the website. And I think I'm not sure if she's the one that does Facebook or if it's Jenny or who, but when we have an employee doing that, it kind of puts them in a tight spot, because there are times where she is asked to place things, and I think it happens with Jenny too, though, even for an elected official. People, and I don't understand how all this goes down, but people want to post things or do whatever, and you're kind of in a tough spot, because without having a policy in place, you can't just restrict, or you look like you're arbitrarily making decisions versus following a policy.
Well,
So
why
I guess
don't we,
I would ask everybody to read them.
yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
resend them in hopes that you read them.
Yeah, I have it on my computer. Why don't you do that, Mark? And we could maybe, like I say, as far as our priority, I would say move this down until we can get some of these other items taken care of. And then it can move up on the list, would be my suggestion.
All right.
Thoughts?
That's fine with me.
Okay, the next one would be COVID funds, how we want to.
No, we skipped number
Oh,
four.
we did? Oh, Airbnb, sorry.
I thought we talked about that at LIT last month.
Well, I'll have a little something to say here about it. First off, I think, I'll preface it, I think we should put this on our list to move up as time goes on. I don't think it's an earth-shattering thing right now. I did call Ed from PMCA, and I spoke with him probably for about 15 minutes Tuesday. And his concern is just that we realize that we could be vulnerable or liable. He alluded to Confluence, the borough of Confluence, and they did have some problems down there, which I won't get into here, but some significant problems. And they did feel the need to regulate it and limit the number. I did find out that our regular B&Bs are covered by our rental ordinance. That's like Levi Deal and Yoder's, because people live in them. The Red Lantern, supposedly. So that is different than these Airbnbs, the short-term rentals. So I would be in favor of any discussion here that we want to have. That we can have it tonight or we can have it later. I would leave it. Let me finish. I would leave it on the list, and then we can move it up. But my concern, and I might as well say it, our PMCA came here and asked us to consider this, or pointed out what he feels would be a vulnerability. Say, for example, we have some Airbnbs here in town, and there would be a fire or a carbon monoxide death. I mean, and I'm no lawyer, what liability does the borough have if there's no regulation on it at all? I'm just the messenger here. I'm saying what Ed, and he's concerned about protecting us. But Ed came here and approached us with a concern that he had, our PMCA, who's a paid group, a professional. Nobody in this council had suggested about limiting the number. That was never discussed, ever. The only thing, when Ed left here, we had decided maybe as president, I said, well, let's get some ordinances together, just like we've done for many other issues, and let's review these ordinances and see what we have. Now, my walking buddy and Eric got a little bit aggravated. Evidently, somebody put on Facebook that council members wanted to regulate the number of these Airbnbs. And then to go a step further, the discussion, and I'm not on Facebook, I have the screenshot right here, was given to me. Who is it? Who's doing this? And finally, the remark was made, apparently the same one who voted against the rental ordinance, or excuse me, the side-by-sides, which is me. And I kind of resent that a little bit. At no time was I ever in favor of, or am in favor of renting it now. And I think for a council member to be spreading this false information, inappropriate information, and then she said it had 80-some reviews or something. I mean, I just think it was a lie. It was not true. I had never, ever discussed or am in favor of limiting the amounts. The only thing this council did was follow the direction of our PMCA. We had a couple of ordinances, which I read, and as far as I know, we haven't even discussed anything as far as restrictions or safety or anything. And my feeling is, like I said, let's kick this can down the road. But I just wanted to say this, that I didn't appreciate, even though my name wasn't mentioned, it was pretty obvious who was opposed, wanted to limit the numbers, and that's absolutely false. So that's all I have to say on the Airbnbs. Terry, you're the committee chairman.
I do. So Mark, I have a question. So the long-term rentals, obviously, we're involved in that. They cover the B&Bs?
No, the rental ordinance doesn't cover B&Bs with respect to daily rentals. If they're a long-term rental, it would be covered. But just to kind of give you a different take on what I do think the council should consider, we're not really enforcing things equally from a zoning standpoint, and this is what I mean. Airbnbs kind of like fly under the radar. B&Bs have to be in certain areas or they have to apply for a variance. I can understand what Mr. Roden was saying at the last meeting, but on the other side of it, I can also say that, he had to go through different steps that if it was zoned differently, and this goes for B&Bs as a whole and Airbnbs, if they were all treated equally, everybody would be on the same playing field. But when it comes to health and safety, what PMCA's concern is, and they've expressed it on other issues, Airbnbs as we stand here today aren't required to have the fire control mechanisms, the safety windows, the exit signs, and that kind of stuff. So I get that, but I'd also throw out, this is an evolving issue, and you're seeing new things occur with it every day.
But Ed, I mean, that's something we could research. I'm not an expert. That's why this zoning ordinance that we have, it would be like a college class. That's how involved it is. You'd have to study it. You could take it at UPJ and pass the test or not. But what Ed told me, we are covered, not maybe the same parameters, but the bed and breakfasts or traditional bed and breakfasts are listed and regulated under our ordinance. So, I mean, I just know what Ed told us. He's our expert. So, I mean, Mark, maybe you want to check on it and see, but I just had the conversation with him Tuesday.
I think he means by the zoning ordinance and not the rental ordinance.
Is definitely zoning, yes. Did I say rental? I meant the zoning. That's what we're talking about here.
Can we clarify something? So Airbnb is a site where you can go and book rooms for a night or a year or a month or, in Naples for 2 months in the winter. It's short-term rentals. It's not Airbnb. That's a site. So I
Well,
think,
but the problem is, everything you read about it doesn't talk about it in a short-term rental sense versus a long-term rental. And that's part of the confusion, Karen, is that people, and I know it's the wrong label, don't get me wrong, but I think we need to, if at minimum, clarify that even by amending definitions, that short-term rentals fall under the same requirements as like a B&B. And what I mean by that is that everybody follow the same rules and standards. And that's why I don't understand why there's a lot of places that kind of act like this is a brand new theory. Yes, it's more popular, but short-term rentals are not a new theory.
Well, like, could you compare like generic cola and the Airbnb's Pepsi-Cola? It's basically it's a cola, but when you say Airbnb, that's like Karen said, that's a company. But my suggestion would be, we've mentioned this, it's been in the public forum. Again, because of fairness to Mark and trying to prioritize, I mean, I just don't think that we can think about this, and we'll keep it on our list, and as it moves up, then we can give a little bit more credence, unless you want to move it up. I mean, that's council's prerogative.
I have one more comment. I sent it around to you guys the other day. So Governor Shapiro released a memo to the press that was sent to me by the legislature. And $23.5 million of new revenue in 2 counties in the northern part of the state in the years 22 and 23. Over $3 million of that just in 1 year, a total of $5 million came from lodging. So there's going to be, if this trail gets finished through Somerset County and we're the trailhead, there's going to be a big demand for lodging. People are really excited about that. I'm not saying that safety is not important. I think it is. And I don't have an issue with that, but I'm saying we need to be careful as a council, in my opinion, that we're not sending anything negative out in the community about our support for new business development, which will hopefully bring jobs. It'll help the restaurants. It'll help everybody. So I just hope that we're real careful about, again, we have a lot of issues in this town. This hasn't been an issue for us. And I don't see it right now as a big priority. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I don't think any action needs to be taken.
So
You know,
we'll just,
it's no different than a hotel. It's short term. They're not inspected or regulated. Well, we only have Dunkuses, but still. And it does bring in a lot of money.
then what I would
And it
ask,
stays here. I have people coming, they're building McDonald's. And they're stayed for a couple days and they ate here, they bought gas here.
Yep.
And if we don't do it, guess what? They're gonna go up to Grantsville and stay up there and spend their money up there.
then, Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is if we want to leave this on the agenda and we have this discussion and we maybe make a motion that we're going to table this for right now, we don't feel it's an issue, and then I'll take it off this list and we'll move on. Does that sound like everybody's in favor of that? I mean, I just was kind of trying to follow the advice of our code enforcement. We've discussed it and it feels like we don't want to move forward on it. So I'm fine with that.
Ready for Artie and Brandon? You guys are up.
Hi, guys.
All right.
We're recording.
Welcome.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. What can we do, or what do we need to do would be my question.
I guess our concern would be primarily the school, like what are your intentions? We did pass, I think it's $125 a month rent, which we're not necessarily interested in that if you don't have the school there. But I guess our interest would be, what are your intentions? Are you going to have a school? Do you want to just vacate the premises? I think that's the concern of the council.
So at this moment, a school is not on our radar at the moment. It could change next year. Just coming in, we were already into the school year. So there was choices, students already enrolled in different things. So it's not practical this year. Ongoing, I can't say until we've looked at some things and considered other people's choices and what they would desire. We'll be glad to pull the stuff, remove it, if that's what y'all wish. At the same time, if there is no use for it at the moment, we have talked and I've considered maybe looking at turning it into something where we could use it for youth to come over and even invite some from the community for like games and activities and things like that instead of it being school only. But again, that's if we got to pay rent, we would look at the price, look at the opportunity. But as far as a school, that there is no plans this year by no means.
Well, I guess then what we'll have to decide, it doesn't necessarily have to be tonight. Now, these are committee meetings. We have no power to make any decisions. We can't take any votes. We have 3 separate committees and everybody's here but 1 council member. I guess what council's going to have to decide is, the biggest thing is, do we want them to vacate the building, vacate the space? I'm ambivalent. It's Terry's the chairperson, but somebody could say something. Let's discuss what is count. Do we want to punt and discuss it next month and give everybody a chance to think about what we'd like the apostolics to do with the space up there to vacate it? Since he's indicated he doesn't think there's going to be a school, and this recreation thing would be tentative at best. Would you?
Yes, it would just be something we would do probably once a week. We'd come in and they could play games. Just a place for young people to gather, keep them off the streets, keep them.
And could they use this room or the gym to do that?
Yes,
'Cause
ma'am.
that's available, and we have Wi-Fi in here now too.
Absolutely. So again, it's just if the space is there, it's not being used. We do have records and things that I've got to figure out what we are to do with some of that, because some of this was just handed to me. So I'm kind of trying to juggle here on where and what we do.
With everything too, so
Yeah.
that end of it's not
So,
easy either.
But as far as removing our stuff, that's not a problem. We could do that.
I think that'd be best.
Sure.
Before it disappears, like I looked around, there's valuables up there that should
Right.
probably be removed. And I think we can use that area up there for baseball meetings or other meetings.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to use it, and if you can't give us, this may be tentative, Karen makes a good point. I mean, we have this gym here.
Right,
You
right.
could rent that for free. I mean, as long as it's nonprofit, you just have to reserve the space with Patty or this room. We have new Wi-Fi here. So, I mean, I think that if the space you feel, Tom, we could use it for other items. So I would probably, I mean, it's just me. I think we should all comment on this.
I'm good with that, yeah. If we need the space, and like Tom said, if there's stuff that we don't want to walk off, it would probably be best if you did take it up to your church. And if you come up with a plan a month from now of wishes you would like, bring it to us and we can review it. And I wouldn't see there'd be a reason why you couldn't.
Sure. Is there a time frame you would like us to make sure we had this done by, just so we've got other projects that we're working with, so we can make sure that we have.
What were you thinking? How long do you think? Give us a time frame. I mean, you don't want to say it has to be out tomorrow, but by the end of the year?
If you give us
in
to
2
the end
months.
of the year, it'll be clean and ready to go.
Now the council may not, I just threw that off the top of my head.
I have one caveat.
Yes,
We will learn about the facilities grant we put in for $2 million next week.
okay,
If we would get that, or normally if you get anything, you get half, but even $1 million, we may need that for storage while we're painting, we're putting new flooring down, upgrading, whatever. Maybe by the middle of November,
okay.
Yeah, Karen, I couldn't agree more. I just threw that off the top of my
Sure.
head was But, I mean, we're kind of in limbo too here with this grant. I mean, we hope we get
Yeah.
a nice, because this building, we want to try to do, fix it up nice, but we need funding for that, so. What do you think, Ron?
I think he has, it'll give him plenty of time till November, move everything out, have it all cleaned up, and we can do with it whatever we want.
Do you think that's fair, Artie, mid-November?
Yeah.
Gives you 5 weeks.
Well, I guess we could see if the grant goes through. If it don't go through, then we can push it till the end of the year.
Yeah.
Then we'll keep in contact and let them know.
Sure.
And then if you do want to use the facilities, like they said, then that would be for free.
Right, and we will. I mean, as far as, I think we already did last weekend, we were here on Sunday and the kids were playing ball and things, and so getting to utilize the gym. I believe it was remodeled recently, so very nice. Yes, ma'am.
I have one piece of advice.
Okay.
So it's none of my business.
Sure.
I'm just throwing this out. We've had an issue with an unoccupied property over on Broadway, people getting in there and getting into some mischief, and we've had the police over there a few times. All I'm gonna say is the building up the street here, just make sure if you're not gonna get it torn down by the end of the year. I'm a little worried about that. I would make sure you have it boarded up tight, because I think it would go up that fast. So, just unsolicited advice.
What is the progress on that?
We finally got the deed signed, so, we made progress there. As far as the future, we have not been able to put, I guess, a pen or pencil to that yet at this moment, so. I'm still looking for a house so I can, I can purchase myself and then I can.
Well, I think it's a good thing that your church, the congregation purchased the building, and I realize that the confusion that you've been under. So my suggestion would be that we ask council members to be patient and maybe something towards spring, if we could think about having it down. I mean, that's just my opinion. Speak up if you disagree, counselors, but we want to work with you. I mean, we're all in this community together, and we appreciate you buying the Methodist church, and I do, keeping the building and then to buy this property. I think it's a wonderful thing that a lot of congregations wouldn't be able to do here in Meyersdale. So we certainly appreciate that. I do.
It should be secured though, because in case everybody forgot, somebody had broken into that property before the borough had sold it and stripped the wire and copper pipe out of it. So just keep in mind, it's happened at least 2 times already. So, it should be secured that it doesn't happen again.
One last comment. The company that did the demo of the house on Grant Street, where the Jenkins property is down there a year or so ago, they were phenomenal. And they do a lot of work for the county. They are extremely reasonable, insured, leveled it up nice. I think everybody'd agree. They did a great job. I have their name and number if you ever needed it. I gave it to another business owner this week. So if you need that, Art, just message me.
And if you have any problems with anything, move it, just come to us. I mean, we want you to do well here and to succeed and spread the word. So we appreciate that very much.
Question, is there permitting and stuff that needs to be taken care of before that's tore down?
Yeah.
Who do we see about that?
PMs.
Okay.
You should contact Patty at the office, and then you'll be directed to PMCA for a demolition permit.
Okay.
The property is zoned residential. Ed and I went up and looked at it. So at least you won't have to go through like the state-led inspections and all that stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess now we can move on to the COVID funds, how we want to distribute that money. What 10,000 is going for Myers Avenue.
We're almost at 11.
Yeah. So I guess however we want to do the rest, if we want to do the playground or.
Can we use any of it to pay off any of these bills, the car, the truck? Mr. Solicitor?
You can use those to some extent to pay off bills, as long as they are bills that would have been paid, which they would have been from the general treasury. Yes, that is something you can do.
Tom, that's a good suggestion, really. We'd have to ask Patty how much we owe, to try to, I mean, somehow we have to come up with some figures. We have playground equipment. That sure as heck not gonna take a big bite out of this COVID relief fund. Maybe I'm wrong. Storm drains, that potentially could. I mean, we have to decide. We're running out of time as far as earmarking it.
Do we have a map of all the storm drains in town?
I don't know. Probably not.
No.
Okay. So should we have one? I mean, should we engage an engineer to do a map?
I mean, you would probably eat up all that money just in the engineering.
I
fees.
know. I hate to do that.
And I would say most of the storm drains are full of dirt, so I don't know exactly how they would locate them.
Well, let me say this. This is October. Since Karen had indicated that we're going to be hearing about this grant for the building within the next couple of weeks, let's boot this down to November. And then we'll have to really get serious at the finance committee meeting. And if we don't get the grant, then I would say we should put some of it in this building. Playground equipment, we can always add other items. But I think if we don't get this grant, do we want to try to use some of it to maybe paint the hallways here, get that all cleaned up, the second floor hallways, things like this, earmark it. I'm just saying that since we're on the precipice here of the grant, when should we hear, Karen?
Next week.
So is that reasonable?
I mean, we had talked about the riprap, but I think the Corps of Engineer, that sounds pretty promising. So we could probably, put it into the building if we don't get the grant.
Well, and we also have that other grant out there for the flood control too.
Yeah.
We did the like 450,000.
Maybe next month, we'll be through a lot of these items. We don't have to discuss them, and we could emphasize more on this COVID money next month after we know where we stand on the building grant. What does council feel about?
Sounds like a plan.
Fine with me.
Okay, public comment policy.
I had put that on, so there's been a lot of comments. We are really lucky that we have a very engaged community. I know, Jeff, your last term, when I would come to the meetings, it was Pat, Connie, and me a lot of times, and that was about it. And now, we have the YouTube, we have Facebook, we have a lot of people coming to the meetings. They do want to express their opinion, and we are here to serve them. And the only thing, I know we have an ordinance that dictates how the meetings run. I'm just wondering, that people are feeling like it's unfair that the public comment is before we discuss any of the items, and then they can't comment after the fact. And so I just wondered if we could or should update our, meeting ordinance to be, maybe at the end before any needed executive session, if we have one, if we'd have like a short public comment session. That is what the public is asking for.
So
Go ahead, Mark.
the couple things I would say is, number one, the reason why the law prefers you to have that meeting, the public comment at the beginning, is they prefer that we are not doing voting or deliberation prior to the public comment. Because what boroughs and townships had done for years is they would vote and handle everything, and then they would let the public comment at the end. And it was almost like it was really kind of disrespectful because it was giving people a voice after the voice didn't matter. One of the reasons why they changed the law August of 2021, requiring amending the agenda and the requirements on posting the agenda, is to keep the public apprised of what is going to be discussed. And in contrary to popular belief, you can't amend everything. There's been some cases recently, and not every issue can be amended and simply just voted on that night. In fact, they're pushing more and more that expenditures should not be, unless it's something is necessitous, shouldn't be a thing that is amended and then just voted on at the meeting for the sole reason of giving the public notice of these issues. The other thing I throw out, and I'm not sure if any of you have ever taken the classes with to deal with being on borough council and some of the things that are out there through the borough association. But one of the things a lot of people don't pick up on is you guys all have, and I don't mean guys in a sexist way, but you council persons all have a duty to listen to your constituents. So one of the things that you may or may not do is you all should reach out to people that you know that live in this community that are your constituents on these different issues. And their views, it shouldn't just be at the meeting, but it should be there should be dialogue that happens between you and constituents outside of the meeting. That is part of our process. So, and the last thing I'll say is you do want to be careful. We allow more public comment than what most places do, and we allow more people per evening to give public comment than what a lot of places do. I only would caution you, if you change how you're doing public comment, that we don't get into these back and forth sessions that have happened in the past and completely devolve a meeting and the purpose of that meeting. I think if there are concerns about the public isn't getting a proper voice on different issues, it never hurts to request to table an issue for that purpose to the next meeting, or to delay action on it because you believe it involves more of the public comments. So those are the things I would add to that.
Let me respond. First off, I disagree with Karen's characterization. When we were present, there were a lot of meetings that we had, nearly a full house here, and people were interested in the community, all the great projects that were done from 2014 forward. But as your president, I have always been fair with public comment. And Karen, I think you have to admit, at the 2 meetings with the side-by-sides, no one left this room without having a chance to speak at public comment. I am following a community down in West Virginia. Their meeting, their council meeting is the same way. They have public comment at the beginning. Anything anybody wants to say, they're free to say it. But to have public comment at the end after the vote's taken, I mean, that's kind of foolish. So like Mark said, we're having it at the beginning of the meeting. But what I don't think is right is we have some people here, I'm not going to mention any names. The one lady was sitting here and probably interrupted the meeting 5 or 6 times with questions that maybe weren't even related. That's inappropriate. If you have something you want to say, I've bent over backwards for 8 years. Now I'm in my 9th year to allow the public to speak. We are the ones that have been elected to make the decisions, and we are engaging in what the public wants to say. I hear people all the time in my office giving me advice or concerns. But I've had complaints from people around this table, possibly a majority, that they don't like that people interrupt from the audience. Some of them don't live in the borough. And then whether they own property or not, that doesn't really matter according to the policies we have now. And the meetings would go on. And I think as your president for 8 years, and now this is number 9, I have been more than fair as far as not cutting people off and letting them speak. We have 5 minutes. A lot of places just have 3. So I would strongly urge council, as the one who runs the meeting, as in charge of keeping order, that we don't change anything and we leave it as it is. I think it's working well, and if there's a couple people that are upset about it, I mean, then they'll just have to realize. And the other thing I'll say on this score, and Mark, you said it, and I want to capitalize on this. We do not move that fast in this borough. I mean, things are discussed sometimes months at a time before we actually make a decision. So to say that we have to rush through things, we just don't do that. I mean, some of these things have been on here over a year. So I feel strongly that the public has more than enough chance and opportunity to speak a public comment. I've never cut anybody off except when the time runs out. We give them 5 minutes, and sometimes we let that expire and go over. So my suggestion would be, I think it's working fine as your leader, your president, and I would strongly suggest we leave it as it is.
And just to add one thing so I can clarify for everybody, that there's 2 different things that go on at meetings sometimes. One is people just want to make statements or comments, whether it's towards any one council person or about a certain subject that quite frankly is inappropriate for a meeting, that is more of banter. That should never occur at all. That is not considered legal public comment. It is okay at times, and if we'll have questions, they can ask those questions. It doesn't mean, and I'll emphasize this to you, most places do not respond when they're asked a question. If you go out to the school board in Meyersdale, they have a policy, which is a legal policy, and they do not respond to any comment or questions. They allow people to talk, but there's none of this back and forth part. I don't see an issue if people ask reasonable questions and they do it in a responsible, appropriate manner. But it's a whole different thing. What happens is the meeting begins to degrade because you have people making comments. Last year, I don't know if anybody would deny this on council. Last year, I thought was really bad because we had times where we went an hour and a half longer than we probably needed to. And it was just people yelling out things and making comments, sometimes derogatory comments. And it wasn't really in support of an issue or a question. It was more of like a melee. So I'll add that into that. When we talk about public comment, there should be a restriction always on banter and inappropriate stuff. But when it comes to somebody asking a respectful question or making a respectful comment, even if it's outside of that time, you can entertain that, but never should banter or anything negative be entertained.
And Mark, I'll capitalize on what you just said here too. I know when you got to the high school, they do not answer questions, and we've worked together for a lot of years, Mark. I always like to engage with our public. I respect them and answer questions, and sometimes other council members will speak up and answer. I mean, it's not like we're trying to hide anything or do anything under the table, but, and I'm saying it again, I think I've been more than fair with the way public comment has been run. Year number 9 here. So is there anything else? If not, maybe we could do a final discussion, Terry, and move on.
Do we put the agenda on our website?
Yes.
Okay.
Patty does.
Mark, can't they look at the agenda and go down, and if they see number 12 and they had something that concerned them, speak at that time, and then before we vote or discuss it ourselves?
Yeah, no, the way it really should happen is when you have that designated spot, if they have an issue with any of the things, or even if it's something new that's not on the agenda, the public are not bound by our agenda, meaning if you had somebody come and they have an issue that's not on our agenda, they can very well bring it up. But what they're supposed to do is look at the agenda, and if they believe there's issues that they have either an opinion or worry, whatever it might be on a concern, that's when they should voice it and not just do it throughout the meeting.
That's what I just said.
Yep.
I think we just ought to leave it the way it is.
Yes, so do I.
Okay, Jeff, if you want to speak about the Christmas wreath?
Yes.
We ain't gonna answer you though.
Yeah, I do, think that, we should do the Christmas lights this year. We have, bulbs down there, to put in the wreaths. So if this is gonna be the last year that we use the wreaths. Might as well use what we have and put them up.
Are the firemen gonna put them up this year?
I think, Clarence was gonna talk to, the fireman about that. I don't know what, what answer he got. I think he's gonna ask him.
Jeff, if you want to be sure you're on the agenda Tuesday night, then you can just give this report then, would be my suggestion. And then I think that everybody here was figuring we are going to use, even though we don't have the new ones yet, we were going to try to repair and rehabilitate the ones we have.
Yeah.
And put them up, and maybe Clarence will be able to weigh in.
Sounds good.
But did you want to start and fix them now? Is that what the?
Yeah, I'm gonna start them this weekend.
Yeah, I would say go ahead. Terry, what do you?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. Can you get in, Jeff? Yeah, I guess you can get in, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, the burn ordinance.
If Mark is okay with this, I would just say, let's deal, actually, hold on. I do have a question, Mark. Are we able now to regulate people burning leaves and brush in the borough? I'm not saying I'm for or against it. It's just a question. Before,
Yeah,
go ahead.
when we had covered this issue before, we couldn't deal with certain types of burning fire. People burning firewood for like campsite things in their backyard is as long as it is clean wood that is not non-treated, non-painted wood. There's not much that can be done about that if it's used for that purpose. But DEP does regulate, and we are able, which is why they sent us that ordinance, to regulate the burning of leaves and brush, because contrary to popular belief, there's a lot of breathing issues. Leaves are really bad for this because of the mold that's in the leaves. When they're burned, it becomes airbound, and it does cause a lot of breathing issues, and is, quite frankly, one of the big pushes that DEP is doing right now. So, yeah, you can regulate that. And in fact, you could even ban the burning of those things, but to ban the use of like a outdoor fire pit for regular wood, unless you have an extreme other safety concern, is not something that would be done.
Is there any interest, Terry, in changing the ordinance?
I mean, there's a lot of people that use that, they have branches fall in their yard. I mean, there would be a lot of upset people, but I mean, I guess we don't want to break the law, but I would say if it's not against the law, I don't know why we should stop it.
Well,
Mark,
just so everybody knows what I mean, there's a difference between what they're trying to cut down on are people with burn barrels, people burning garbage in their furnaces in the smoke, but also burning like large piles of brush, debris, and burning leaves like that. That if people are burning branches and cut up output brush responsibly, and it's not like large volumes, I don't know how you would police the difference between that and a fire pit. I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that we get many complaints about burning in the borough.
Mark, if we decided we just, at this point, just want to leave it alone and don't do anything, Terry had indicated he had a concern if we would be breaking the law, but do you think we would be okay at this point just to wait and see how the legislature and the Commonwealth moves forward, the DEP, and maybe address it at a different time if there's no interest here in moving this forward?
don't see any need to deal with it unless you as a council feel that we should. I mean, the state itself already has jurisdiction. So quite frankly, if your neighbor was burning things that they shouldn't be burning or causing smoke to enter onto your property, which is how they talk about it, you could contact DEP and have, all the rights. So long and the short is I don't see a great advantage to the borough going changing the ordinance or doing anything. And I'll use the Tom Smith line. It's not like we're going to be able to enforce it. So
You took his thunder.
I mean, I will say this, I mean, I guess it's, the MMA owns that ground, I mean, is that what we're saying?
Yes.
I
the
know,
MMA does definitely own that part, and I think there has been burning in the past. And just so we're all on the up and up on this, my recommendation is going to be to the MMA that there's no more burning down there, period, because that actually does run afoul of the law. And the dumping part is not legitimate either. So those are the two things I'm going to ask them to change. But there again, that property is not owned by the borough. It is in the borough, but it's not owned by the borough.
so if you're gonna advise the MMA not to let them burn, then we can't, it's a no then for the residents, correct? I
To
mean,
bring
we
stuff
just,
down there,
I mean, we just talked about, we was not gonna change anything.
That's with our ordinance. Now, the MMA, that's how you'll have to decide. I think what Mark's saying is this is a specific hotspot that the DEP
so
recognized. Go ahead.
what the problem is, and I don't know how often this happens, but evidently several times a year, the brush or whatever's down there at that site gets lit, okay, gets burned. And DEP has dealt with people complaining because that smoke hovers around the water and stays in that low-lying area, and it's not a legal action to do. So if that needs curtailed, they haven't fined anybody yet, but they strongly suggest that stop,
So,
which is usually a good hint not to do it.
so then we should take the signs down that permits brush dumping down there?
Yeah, but just so everybody knows, since the MMA owns that, they're the ones that will have to take action and do those things, not the borough.
Okay.
Patty was right, the borough does not own that.
So another question, Mark, are we allowed, when the borough digs a ditch or the MMA has a water leak and we replace it with shale, we're not allowed to take the dirt?
See, if it is clean, what's called clean fill, okay? Which means it is not adulterated with petroleum or other kinds of contaminants, and it doesn't contain like C and D, bricks, block, any kind of construction materials. If it is clean fill, or like shale, for example, yes, you could store it down there for that purpose.
I mean,
But
there would be a little blacktop with that.
that is something we should probably try to keep out of it as much as possible. I mean, I know you can't do it perfectly, don't get me wrong, but
So does it matter if it's in a flood zone?
yeah, it does matter if it's in a flood zone because it really shouldn't be there, period, which that was going to be the next part of that discussion with the MMA. We should have a different location to put that stuff if we keep it because, and I don't know if anybody else knows this, the Maple Festival actually owns a strip of ground right down beside it. So I don't know if they know that. But that being said, it shouldn't really be in a flood zone. And I'm not sure how they've allowed us to do that because right next to that is that large stormwater impoundment for the flood control. And it's amazing they've never told us not to have that nearby.
Well, I guess we'll discuss this at the MMA meeting then in 2 weeks, Mark.
Yep.
And then the MMA will come back to the borough and say what you've decided, and then we'll follow suit with your recommendations.
That's fine.
Yeah.
All right, the seasonal worker, temporary.
It's all advertised.
When was the deadline for that?
The deadline is noon on Monday. So I guess we'll have to decide at meeting night, if I did talk to Patty, she got some applications that it didn't seem any would be, I mean, well, I won't get into that.
Yeah.
But it was on the Daily American has a job description. You can apply for jobs, so we'll have to wait and see what, and Mark, you'll be at the meeting Tuesday night, and then
Here on Tuesday.
you can
That is
advise us.
That is something that we're gonna have to look at and discuss the applications in executive session. We shouldn't mention people's names that have applied or
Correct,
anything about any of the applicants. That is not
Correct.
something that is open.
correct. Yeah, I stopped before I went too far on that.
All right, then the last one would be amusement devices.
And again, I would just ask council, we'll keep it on our unresolved item list. And as it moves up, we can deal with it so that, we don't overtax Mark. And does anybody object then if I just remove the burn ordinance from our unresolved item list, that we just take it off the agenda? And or is everybody okay with dealing with the amusement ordinance as things move up and Mark has more time? Is that okay?
That should be it.
Okay, well, thank everybody for coming. Terry, good job. Jenny, good job. And Mark, Ron running